Diana's fears that she'd be murdered, that fits in with what Al-Fayed said.
The world weeps at the death of Princess Diana. On every continent today, mourners paying tribute.
The expression on her face is so eloquent. I've never seen her show so clearly her dissatisfaction with him.
It's no news that Princess Diana is an icon loved by millions. To this day, she is celebrated as a symbol of compassion and a force for change. After she died, she left behind a legacy filled with love, loss, and unanswered questions.
The princess, who spent her life in the relentless glare of the public eye, died in a speeding car in Paris, apparently trying to evade pursuing photographers.
But what if the story you've heard about that fateful night isn't the whole truth? From secret letters to controversial investigations, there's more to Diana's story than meets the eye. Who stood to gain from her untimely death? And why, decades later, do the questions still remain?
Royal fans and mourners paid respects to Princess Diana at the gates of Kensington Palace on Wednesday, on the 25th anniversary of her death.
Let's get into it. The strange engagement ring. Diana was given on her final day. August 31st, 1997 will forever go down as one of the darkest days in the history of the world. On this day, Princess Diana, often called the People's Princess, tragically passed away in a car crash in Paris, France. As with every other high-profile death, in the days and weeks that followed, details about her final moments began to emerge. But there is one particular detail that has left the world wondering for years. This detail was a ring that her boyfriend, Dodi Fayed, reportedly intended to give her on that very day. Now, at that time, Diana had been divorced from Prince Charles for about a year. Their separation was finalized on August 28, 1996.
Queen's directive that the Prince and Princess of Wales end their marriage for good. Paul Workman now on the world's most famous couple, heading for the world's most famous divorce.
After a long and public breakdown of their marriage, Diana was trying to move forward with her life, focusing on her humanitarian work and spending time with her two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. By the summer of 1997, she had started a romantic relationship with Dodi Fayed, the son of billionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed. Dodi was a film producer and socialite, known for his luxurious lifestyle. Their relationship became public in July 1997, when paparazzi photographed them together on Mohammed Al-Fayed's yacht in the Mediterranean. The images showed Diana and Dodi enjoying each other's company, laughing and embracing.
She told her friends she was deliriously happy with Dodi Al-Fayed in those last weeks, cruising with him aboard his father's yacht. And what she was trying to do is really make the man she really loved.
These photos caused a media frenzy, as the world was eager to know more about Diana's new romance. Some people were excited for her, seeing Dodi as a fresh start after the challenges of her previous marriage. Others were skeptical about the relationship's seriousness, wondering if it was a summer fling or something more meaningful. As their relationship progressed, rumors began to swirl about Dodi's intentions. On August 30th, 1997, the day before the fatal accident, Dodi and Diana were in Paris, staying at the Ritz Hotel, which Mohammed Al-Fayed owned. That evening, they had dinner at the hotel's restaurant. Earlier that day, Dodi had visited a famous jewelry store, Reposi, located near the Place Vendôme. It was later revealed that he had chosen a diamond ring from a collection called Dis-moi oui, which translates to "Tell me yes" in English. The ring, which was valued at approximately $200,000, is a striking piece of jewelry.
And this is the $200,000 engagement ring Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, claims the couple chose together just before they died.
Featuring a solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller diamonds, set in yellow gold. It was part of a luxurious collection, fitting for someone of Diana's stature. This ring has been widely interpreted as an engagement ring, though there is no definitive proof that Dodi planned to propose to Diana that night. Some reports suggest that he wanted to surprise her with the ring and ask her to marry him, but others claim that Diana was not ready for marriage and might not have accepted the proposal. Friends of Diana have said she was happy in her relationship with Dodi, but was cautious about rushing into another marriage, especially given her past experiences. But what actually happened on the day Diana died? The tragic car crash happened shortly after midnight on August 31st, 1997. Diana, Dodi, their driver Henry Paul, and bodyguard Trevor Reese-Jones were in a black Mercedes-Benz trying to escape paparazzi who were pursuing them. The car crashed in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, killing Dodi and Henry Paul instantly. Diana was critically injured and passed away later that morning at the Piti-Salpêtrière hospital. Trevor Reese-Jones was the only survivor. When news of the crash broke, the world was in shock.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident in Paris just a few hours ago.
As details about Diana and Dodi's final hours came to light, the story of the diamond ring added another layer of intrigue. The ring was found among Dodi's belongings, and its significance became a topic of intense speculation. Was it truly an engagement ring? Had Dodi planned to propose to Diana that night? And if he had, would Diana have said yes? These questions remain unanswered. Diana's friends and close confidants have offered different perspectives on the matter. Some believe that Diana was deeply in love with Dodi and might have considered marrying him. Others have suggested that while Diana enjoyed her time with Dodi, she was not looking for a serious commitment. Diana herself had expressed in interviews and to those close to her a desire for independence and a focus on her humanitarian work. She was passionate about causes such as landmine removal and advocating for those affected by poverty and illness. Marriage might have seemed like a distraction from these important pursuits. Mohammed Al-Fayed has been vocal about his belief that his son and Diana were deeply in love and intended to marry. He has stated publicly that the ring was indeed an engagement ring and that Dodi had shared his plans to propose. But other sources close to Diana have questioned this narrative, especially since she was very cautious to get into relationships after her divorce. This caution can be traced back to the fallouts Diana experienced after her marital problems with Prince Charles were exposed to the world. But who exactly did she fall out with? Let's find out. Fallouts and strained relationships Diana experienced after her divorce.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate.
After her divorce from Prince Charles in 1996, Princess Diana faced many problems. Life after the split was not easy, and her struggles showed how hard it was to be one of the most famous people in the world. Diana tried to move on, but her relationships with her family and the public were often complicated. In November 1995, before her divorce was finalized, Diana did an interview with Martin Bashir on the BBC's Panorama. In this interview, she talked about her troubled marriage, her feelings of loneliness, and her struggles with mental health. She also said something about how there were 3 people in her marriage.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Referring to Prince Charles's relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. This interview was a big moment because it was rare for someone in the royal family to speak so openly. Many people admired Diana for her honesty, but it also upset the royal family, who usually stayed silent about personal matters. Years later, it was discovered that Martin Bashir had tricked Diana to get the interview. He showed her fake papers and made her think people were spying on her. This news came out in 2021, long after Diana had passed away. Many people felt sad and angry because Diana had trusted him. They wondered if she would have shared her story if she had known the truth. That's not all. Diana also had a difficult relationship with her brother, Charles Spencer, after her divorce. They were close when they were younger and grew up together at their family home, Althorpe. But after the divorce, things between them became strained. Diana wanted to move to a small house on the Althorpe estate to escape the constant attention from the media. Her brother said no because he was worried it would bring too much attention to their family home. This hurt Diana, as she felt like she couldn't count on her brother for help when she needed it the most. Even after Diana's tragic death on August 31, 1997, her brother's decisions caused some disagreements in the family. Charles Spencer was in charge of Diana's estate, which included her belongings and memories. One issue was about her famous wedding dress, the one she wore in 1981 when she married Prince Charles. The dress was very special, and many people thought it should be carefully displayed as part of Diana's legacy.
Royal wedding gown, which is Princess Diana's wedding dress, which is at the West Edmonton Mall in Canada. The actual exhibition is a fabulous exhibition.
But the family didn't always agree on how to handle it. These arguments showed how difficult it was for them to honor Diana while also dealing with their own feelings and responsibilities. After her divorce, Diana was very careful about who she trusted. She had been hurt in her marriage and didn't want to make the same mistakes again. She had a relationship with a heart surgeon named Hasnat Khan, and later, she dated Dodi Fayed. Diana wanted to keep these parts of her life private, but the media kept following her. She also worried about her two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. She wanted to protect them from the pain and attention she had faced. Diana often said that being a mother was the most important thing to her, and she worked hard to give her boys a normal and happy life. Despite her struggles, Diana remained strong in many ways. She found new purpose in helping others. She spent a lot of time supporting charities, especially those that focused on landmine victims and people living with HIV/AIDS. These causes meant a lot to her, and she used her fame to bring attention to them. Some believed that her work, especially her campaign against landmines, made her a target. But that was not the only conspiracy theory that was revealed following her death. Keep watching to find out what the others are. Conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death. Since the day of her death, the circumstances of the accident that led to Diana's demise raised many questions. These doubts grew into conspiracy theories, as some believed Diana's death might not have been an accident. Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, was one of the most vocal supporters of these theories. He believed that Diana and Dodi were deeply in love and planned to marry. According to Al-Fayed, their relationship upset powerful people who didn't want Diana, a member of the British royal family, to marry a Muslim man. He claimed that their deaths were planned to stop this marriage from happening. Al-Fayed also pointed to the $200,000 ring Dodi purchased shortly before their deaths, saying it was proof of their engagement plans. Other theories focused on the behavior of Henry Paul, the driver. Initial reports showed that Paul had been drinking before the crash and was driving at high speed to escape paparazzi. But conspiracy theorists suggested that Paul might have been working with someone to cause the crash. Some even claimed that there was some more foul play at hand, especially since there was a 1 hour 45 minutes delay before an ambulance showed up at the accident scene, even though the hospital was nearby. In 2004, a British investigation called Operation Paget looked into the theories about Diana's death. This investigation lasted for 3 years and cost millions of pounds. It found no evidence of foul play and ruled that the crash was a tragic accident caused by reckless driving and the pursuit by paparazzi. Things don't end there. One of the most talked about theories involved Diana's own words. In 1995, 2 years before her death, Diana gave a famous interview where she talked about her fears. She mentioned that she felt unsafe and worried that someone might try to harm her. After her death, a note she had written to her butler surfaced, where she expressed fears about her brakes being tampered with. This note added fuel to the theories that someone might have wanted her gone. Some political figures also joined the speculation. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi suggested that Diana's death wasn't an accident.
Was born in a Bedouin tent, came to power in a coup, and for more than 40 years, Muammar Gaddafi has stood as one of the most bizarre characters on the world stage.
He claimed that her growing popularity and her work against landmines might have made her a target. Diana's campaign against landmines was gaining global attention, and she had visited Angola to show the dangers of these weapons. Some believed her work could have upset powerful governments or industries connected to weapons production. Despite these theories, many experts and investigations concluded that Diana's death was a tragic accident. The French authorities and the British investigation both agreed that Henry Paul's actions and the paparazzi's pursuit were to blame, but for people like Mohammed Al-Fayed and others who loved Diana, these conclusions didn't provide enough answers. Diana's death remains one of the most talked about tragedies in modern history. Even today, more than 25 years later, the mystery, a team of archaeologists led by Otto Schaden found it in 2005. When they opened it, they saw 7 wooden coffins and many big jars. When they opened the coffins, they didn't find any mummies inside. Instead, they found things that were used in mummification, like special salts, linens, and broken pottery. The jars also had mummification supplies inside, so it seems like this tomb was used to store things that were needed for mummifying bodies, rather than being a tomb for a pharaoh or someone important. Some of the clay seals found in KV 63 have writing on them, including a partial word that looks like Pa-Aten. This is interesting because it's part of the name of Ankhesenamun, who was the wife of Tutankhamun. The way the chamber is built, the shape of the coffins and jars, and the writing on the seals all suggest that KV 63 is from the 18th dynasty, which was around the same time as Tutankhamun's reign. Tutankhamun's tomb is actually very close to KV 63. The design of the entrance to KV 63 is very similar to other tombs from the 18th dynasty, like KV 55 and the tomb of Yuya and Thuya. This means that KV 63 was probably built during the second half of the 18th dynasty, which was around 1400 BC. This period is part of the New Kingdom, which lasted from around 1600 to 1100 BC. Some people think that all 3 of these tombs might have been designed by the same person or group of architects, which would be an interesting connection between them. The entrance to KV 63 is a deep pit, about 5 meters down. At the bottom of the pit, there is a stone door that is about 1.5 meters tall. This door leads to a single room, and when the team first discovered the tomb, they made a small opening in the door to take a look inside. Later, they found out that the door had been opened and closed several times in the past, and the blocking stones that were meant to seal the doorway were actually found inside the tomb. This means that someone had gone back into the tomb after it was first closed, and then sealed it again. The room inside the tomb is about 4 by 5 meters, and the walls are plain white. Inside, the team found 7 wooden coffins, which is a very interesting discovery. One of the coffins was small enough for a child, and another was even smaller, and it seemed that one was meant for an infant. Some of the coffins in KV 63 have special resin masks on them that are yellow, while others have black masks. The team thinks that the yellow masks might have been used for women, but they're not sure. Unfortunately, some of the coffins have been damaged by termites. The damage is so bad that it looks like black paste in some places. But luckily, a few of the coffins are still in good condition, with no termite damage at all. The termites probably came from the huts that the workers built above the tomb, and they likely date back to the time of the pharaohs. Even though the coffins are damaged, there's no sign that water ever got into the tomb, which is surprising. But now that the tomb is open, there's a new problem. It is at risk of being damaged by flash floods. The team doesn't know who the coffins in KV 63 were meant for, but they did find out that none of them had bodies inside. Instead, the coffins held things that were used in the process of mummifying a body.
They found inside the coffins embalming material that the Egyptian used for mummification.
It looks like all the coffins were used for the same person's mummification, and the chamber was only used once. There's no sign that the chamber was sealed and then opened again, so it seems like all the things inside were left there at the same time. The chamber also had 28 big jars made of pottery and alabaster that were about 2 feet 5.5 inches tall. These jars were heavy, weighing around 90 to 95 pounds, and were slightly different in size and weight. 3 of the jars were broken, probably centuries or decades ago, with cracks in the rim or lower neck. These jars were likely used to store things needed for mummification, like special salts or linens. When the team found the jars in KV 63, most of them still had their lids on, but they didn't have any special marks from the pharaoh's seals. It looks like the jars were made and then painted white while they were still in the sand, because the bottoms of the jars still show the original clay. The team also found a big piece of pottery called an ostrakhan that was broken when they opened the tomb, but they're not sure which jar it came from. The way the jars were sealed is very interesting. First off, a plug made of mud was put in the jar, then a seal was added, and finally, a big plaster seal was put on top. Dr. Shaden thinks that this was done on purpose, and that it was important to seal the jars in this specific way. This suggests that the people who put the artifacts in the chamber were careful and thoughtful, and that the chamber was not just a place to throw things away. There must have been a reason why they put the artifacts in the chamber. What do you think the reason was? The team found over 385 pounds of natron in the chamber. Some of it was inside the coffins, and some was in small bags. The jars and what was inside them were very similar to what was found in another tomb called KV-54, which was used to prepare Tutankhamun's body for burial. The team wanted to take a closer look at the coffins and jars, but they needed a bigger space to work in, so they decided to move everything to a different tomb called KV-10, where they could examine everything carefully and scientifically. To move the coffins and jars, the team came up with a smart plan. They used a pulley system to lift everything safely out of the shaft. They even used grass buckets and bubble wrap to protect the very fragile jars. The team started moving the jars on March 2, 2006, and they were able to relocate most of them safely. One of the jars they moved was particularly interesting. It was made of alabaster, and it had small pots inside that were packed in mud. The team has taken a closer look at 12 of the storage jars so far, and they found a lot of different things inside. Some of the jars had natron, which was used to dry out bodies for mummification. Others had pieces of wood, seeds, shells, and even small animal bones. They also found bits of pottery, papyrus, mud trays, and seals. Some of the jars even had pieces of twine or rope inside. Dr. Salima Ikram, an expert in ancient Egypt, is leading the team that's carefully removing and examining all of these contents. One of the coffins, labeled G, seemed to have some stuffing coming out from under the lid. When the team opened it, they found 5 pillows inside. This got researchers amazed because textiles from ancient Egypt are very rare, and pillows are even more so. The team was eager to study the materials used to make these pillows, and then, on May 26, 2006, they made another amazing discovery. A small golden coffin, only 42 centimeters long, inside the youth coffin, under the pillows. It's shaped like a real person, and it's made of pink gold leaf. On June 28, 2006, the team finally opened the last coffin that was still sealed. But instead of finding a mummy inside, they found only things that were used to prepare a body for burial, like special salts and linens. It looked like the coffin had been used before because there was a shape like a human body at the bottom of it. The team thinks that maybe the body that was once in the coffin was moved or destroyed. Some people thought that maybe the coffins were used for important people like Kiya or Ankhesenamun, who were related to Tutankhamun. But the team doesn't think that's true. They think the coffins were just regular ones that were used for ordinary people. They probably came from a store that sold things for funerals and were used to hold the things that were needed to prepare a body for burial. The tomb. KV-63 is likely the place where Tutankhamun's body was prepared for burial. It's near his tomb, and they were both sealed at the same time. Some things from Tutankhamun's funeral were found in another place, KV-54, and those were probably extra things that didn't fit in KV-63. In 2010, a team led by Dr. Otto Schaden went back to KV-63 with a TV crew and found more storage jars, a special bed with lion heads, and pieces of old wine jars. They think KV-63 was used by the people who prepared Tutankhamun's body for burial, who were probably his family members. The discovery of KV-63 happened in 2005 when a team led by Dr. Schaden found the entrance to the tomb. They announced their discovery in 2006, and at first, they thought KV-63 was a tomb, which would have been the first new one found in the area since Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. But now they think KV-63 was actually a place where they prepare bodies for burial, and not a tomb itself. The tomb KV-63 is situated in a location that falls between KV-10, which belonged to Amen-Messa, and KV-62, which belonged to Tutankhamun. This location is in the central part of the eastern branch of the valley and is close to the point where many pathways intersect, and thousands of tourists pass through every day. The discovery of KV-63 happened when a team of archaeologists were digging at the entrance of KV-10 to find out more about the reign of Amenmesse. They were looking through the remains of some old houses that workers from the 19th dynasty had built. As they dug, they found a layer of dark rock with pieces of white stone, which was the last layer that Howard Carter had excavated. When they kept digging, they found a straight edge of cut stone, which turned out to be the top of a vertical shaft. Unfortunately, they found this at the end of the digging season in 2004 to 2005, so they had to stop their work and wait until the next season to continue their search. Now, back to the KV-64, the debate about the true history of ancient Egypt. Some researchers are now thinking that the history of ancient Egypt might be different from what we've been told. They believe that the Egyptians might have copied the people who built the pyramids, which would mean that the pyramids and the Sphinx are much older than we thought. These researchers think that the pyramids and the Sphinx could be as old as 800,000 years. This is a very different idea from what most archaeologists believe. They think that the Sphinx was built between 2558 and 2532 BCE. But John Anthony West had a different idea. In 1992, he surprised everyone by saying that the Sphinx was actually built 10,000 years earlier, before Egypt was a desert. West and some other researchers noticed something important that others had missed. The Sphinx has marks on its body that look like they were made of water. After John Anthony West said that the Sphinx was much older than most people thought, he found other scientists who agreed with him. They thought that the history of ancient Egypt might be different from what we've been told. West wanted to learn more, so he looked for someone who would help him investigate. He found Robert Schoch, a professor at Boston University who was willing to think outside the box and look at the evidence in a new way. Schoch was interested in studying not just the Sphinx, but the whole region, and what it might mean for our understanding of human history. Schoch first saw the Sphinx in 1990, and right away, he noticed that something didn't add up. The date that most people accepted for when the Sphinx was built didn't seem to match what he was seeing. He thought that the Sphinx looked much older than that. When Robert Schoch took a close look at the Sphinx, he noticed that it had been through a lot of wet weather, which is very different from the dry and desert-like conditions of the Sahara Desert today. He realized that the Sphinx had been eroded by heavy rainfall.
I think that they could be right about the weathering,
which meant that it was much older than most people thought. Schoch thought that the academics who dated the Sphinx had missed these signs of erosion, and that the Sphinx was actually much older than they said. Schoch's discovery was exciting for him, but many other scientists didn't believe him. They made fun of his ideas and refused to consider them. But Schoch knew that the heavy rainfall that eroded the Sphinx was not common in Egypt 5,000 years ago, but it was very common 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. The whole confusion is enough to make you wonder, how old really is the Sphinx? Some researchers named Manichev and Parkhomenko found out that the Sphinx was partly covered in water, which made holes in its walls. One of these holes is very big and matches the water level from a very long time ago, called the Pleistocene Age. From this evidence, geologists think that the Sphinx was already built on the Giza Plateau at that time. This is a very surprising discovery because it means that the Sphinx could really be as old as 800,000 years. The Mediterranean Sea was much bigger and reached all the way to Egypt and the Giza Plateau. This would explain why the Sphinx has marks of erosion, and it's because seawater was splashing against it for thousands of years. The idea that the Sphinx is 800,000 years old is a very new and different idea from what most people believe. Most people think that the Sphinx is much younger, but Manichev and Parkhomenko's research suggests that it could be one of the oldest monuments on Earth. Andrew Collins has a different idea about the Sphinx. He thinks that the rock that the Sphinx is made of is very old, but the statue itself might have been carved much later, so the rock is ancient, but the statue is not as old as the rock. Professor Schoch studied the Sphinx in 1991 and used science to figure out how old it is. He found out that the Sphinx is thousands of years older than the Egyptian pharaohs and was built at the end of the last ice age. This means that the Sphinx was built when the Sahara region was much greener and had a lot of plants and animals, and it rained a lot. Even though many other archaeologists have criticized Schoch's ideas, he has stuck to his findings. He has used special equipment to study the ground around the Sphinx, and this equipment has shown that the Sphinx might be even older than he first thought, maybe as old as 10,000 BCE. Graham Hancock, a famous researcher, has studied the Sphinx and thinks it has been exposed to a lot of rainfall for about 1,000 years, but there was no rainfall in that area during the time of the pharaohs, or for thousands of years before that, so Hancock believes that the Sphinx must be much older than we think, over 12,500 years old. This is a very different idea from what most Egyptologists believe. Robert Bauval, an Egyptian writer and engineer, has also looked at the Sphinx and noticed that there are no writings or inscriptions that connect it to the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. This means that the Sphinx might be from a much earlier time than we thought. That's not all. The discovery of hidden chambers and passageways under the pyramids in Giza and other sites has added more confusion to the argument between traditional archaeologists and new researchers. This finding has led to more questions about where ancient civilizations really came from. For a long time, many people believed that the pyramids were built by slaves or foreigners who were forced to work against their will. But when scientists dug up skeletons near the pyramids, they found out that the workers were probably ordinary Egyptian farmers who worked on the pyramids during the flood season, when the Nile River covered much of the land. Building the Great Pyramid of Khufu was a huge project that needed a lot of workers. It's estimated that around 2.3 million massive stone blocks, each weighing about 2.5 tons, had to be cut, moved, and put together to build the pyramid. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote that it took 20 years and 100,000 workers to build the pyramid. But later discoveries suggest that there might have been only around 20,000 workers. Do you think another tomb might be found in the Valley of Kings soon? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to leave a like, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next updates.